We get what we can, how we can, you know.
I mean, if you could teach at least one word or two words, basically that's progress.
I get a kick out of her $2 too.
Yeah.
He goes from really interesting, long-ago stories to crazy stuff. I enjoy both. And then there's some in the middle, but I'll leave it to you guys. I just keep scrolling down today.
We're gonna get started here, just gonna have someone to offer prayer.
Sign in.
Yeah, sign in and.
So I called her on the way over and I said, there's this meeting going on. I don't know. Sherry, is your meeting online? Yeah. Yep.
There you are.
Yep, we're online.
So I have to wait to read. She said, maybe I'll see you on YouTube. I told her about it. She said, good, I'm gonna find it and get on. She said,
Yeah, if people comment, he can see it.
can they see you from this way? I forget which.
No, it's. Oh, look at. Those things aren't working right now.
Okay.
So it's just the camcorder today.
Over on that
Oh.
side over here.
Oh, that's weird. So is that one working? Calvin. So it's not this? It's not this working, it's that camera over there?
This microphone and then this camera over here.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. I guess it's those cameras and this microphone.
Well, I just wanted to be sure they did you on camera. Since you're chairing the meeting.
Can you ask Jolene to start us off with a prayer?
Where's all your elders? There's gotta be somebody older than me here. Gotta be, huh? Oh, huh. Let me talk to you, I bet you can learn. So got to get a little happy to Tato, o técnico, a gente vai vir nesse problema. Aqui é um lá. Aqui é chantando na sua. Aqui é rápido que ele não. E que é a lá que lá. Tu é nem fácil, se é a chique. Chante, outra é a chique. Ela não lá para aqui. Outra que é a cara. Tu é a caixa. Kasila apetu pastena wakhank ake. Sishanko oyake kile leche. Lakota eapi kile apeti kile ake. Dona wota ke le inaji kile. Chantana nasula ki chuna iwogla kapite. Oika te kasila. Nana echa nunki chukuro te kasila. No ogna taku washte etana yuki te kasila. Nuki chukuro bina hekteka. The chosen no walk it. The Kashla wobblers a wink to us take in a young couple to Kashla. Well, I said, category up to we told Chucky Uki and it's a particular lecture, a particular Kawita. Chotena Saloki Chupi. Yet that Taku was staying up in a Nukichuko to Kashla. Was I put cheapy champed together like it. High uncle Kitchuna, oils. Nuki Chukupa, Usani Chuku. We talk here, yes.
Thank you for that. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I appreciate you being here. Today is our second time meeting and coming together for this. Traditionally, normally, like according to the bylaws and the ordinances, what usually happens is if there's a change to the law and order code or an ordinance under the Rosebud Sioux tribe that's made that affects all of the people, a public hearing must be held. And after the public hearing, then we can go into the committee, which is the Governmental Affairs Committee, is the committee that's bringing this forth. That's which committee I'm bringing this forward from. Hello, welcome. So once this draft has had a public hearing, then we forward it on to the council, the tribal council, and it goes up for a vote. And if it passes, that's the first reading. And after the first reading, and if it passes, then there'll be a second reading. Once the second reading happens, then it will go to publication for 11 days. There has to be a break of 7 days between the first reading and the second reading. So once that happens, those both happen at tribal council, then it's published. And after 11 days, it becomes law. This ordinance becomes law. Because this is something that's dear to so many people's hearts, and because this is something that embodies who we are as a nation, I'm not just doing the one hearing, one and done, and heading to council with it. I'm trying to take my time and be very respectful because this isn't, I know that we're using the IRA government tools as a tool to try and help bring all of our language programs together. This isn't something that I'm trying to give over to the IRA side of the government and it owns this. It's not like that. What my intent is, and the committee's intent, is to give this to the people so the people can take it and do what needs to be done to revitalize and save our language and culture. And I want that to be done in a good way. I want all of us to, I know we've had a lot of discussion about how we need to do things, discussion about proper orthography, discussion about what needs to be done. But before any of that can be even discussed, I want to go back to this first ordinance that's going to bring everybody together and give everybody a seat at the table by law to be able to speak up and have a voice when it comes to the language and the culture here. When you look at the ordinance, the purpose, and the committee composition, section 2, in here I might have forgotten, like the last time I forgot a few people, a few groups. So today is the day where if there's something in this paper that needs to be edited, added to, taken out, that we're going to talk about that. So you can have some time to do that if you would like. If you want to be acknowledged as what you're doing, just raise your hand and then you'll be able to get the floor and speak your piece. You can do it one of two ways. You can sit where you're sitting now if you're comfortable with that. You can stand where you're sitting, or you can go to the podium and speak. The microphone is for recording purposes only, so it's not going to amplify your voice at all. Thank you. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Little low up you want you stop me. Omni chop you let honey. Well you can go up until when I hear this thing. We're gonna let some here let was you let back in the pick you have or make here pachabi akta. Ish hele theater stuff. Lupi was you Is this superseding the 2008-295 ordinance, a resolution, or is it a combination? Is it superseding that, pushing that out? Or is it a combination of what we're doing now and adding on to that ordinance, that resolution 295?
What year? 06?
2008.
2008? I'm unaware of that ordinance, so I can get a copy of that.
All of what we're doing here was finished back then. It was all them. We need to take a look at that. How many of you are familiar with that? 2008, ordinance 295. Okay. If this is superseding that, I don't know. Because it takes a lot away from, I think both of them take a lot away from. They don't really complement each other, I don't think. So it just sends the ball back and forth. And it leaves us confused. Those of us don't actually Lakota won't black up because they're not that well, let's a little mini check there. Tako i vogla kap čimpi ješ. Tako i štam hanta, a ke samja tako, a kakav čimpi. Na ke eče, you have to get it beyond it. And I'm eche this year. These things that the council does and the resolutions that are brought, they finish one, they don't really do anything with it. Now they're making we're trying to make another one. We don't even understand the first one. The first one really hasn't put into, at some measurements, it's been put to use. But if we can get the secretary's office to make copies for that right now, take a look at that, compare that to this. Compare that to this and see what is it saying the same thing that what we're trying to say here today in the last meeting. Yellow.
Thank you. I text Nicole, she's going to get us a copy so we can all review that copy to make sure that we're not duplicating. And this isn't a meeting it's going to be this way only. This is just a starting point. So if there's things in those, if it's a resolution only and not an ordinance, this would supersede it. So we could pull that language in or include it in this ordinance. I wanted to bring to the attention of everybody that's here the second page. We had a lengthy discussion last time we came together, and there was, you'll see the stuff that was stricken. All of those in attendance, they had some concerns, and one of the biggest things was we do not want this ordinance to hinder what's already being done. We don't want this ordinance to hinder anybody from being able to teach the language in the way that they want to teach it. We came to the understanding and acknowledgement that language is taught in many different ways. It's taught on paper, it's taught verbally, and it's allowable to be taught anyway. So with that, we struck out the fourth paragraph, where we say to identify and screen qualified individuals to hire a contract. And the reason we did that is there are already people that have specific culture committees that they're working with that consist of our elders. And we didn't want a committee to have a meeting to come forward and approve somebody to be hired. So we didn't want to so we struck that. On the next one, we struck out to approve language curriculums developed by the coordinator, and we changed it to adopt a scale of language proficiency. We thought that would be a lot better and put this more of like this language and culture committee would be more of a way to bring all of the programs together and not hinder them from being able to do their job. So they could scatter to the four winds and get the work done that they've been working on and are working on. We also struck the 7th and the 9th and some there in the 12th paragraph. So just please take some time to read through it and let me know what your thoughts are. And also, I know I keep bringing us back to number 2, the committee composition, but that portion is really important as well, because each of these entities that are listed here of the committee could grow or change, and it could always be amended by tribal council. I don't want it to be too big where you can't get a quorum, but I don't want it to be too small where there's not enough people included in the decisions that are being made. Like I said, I'm trying to be really thoughtful and make sure everybody's included. If there's a language program that is left out, please let me know and I'll add them here to the list.
Excuse me.
Yes.
In looking at your list, I guess my question is, why not county?
We can include them.
I'm only saying, I know we're all struggling, but as far as teaching language and wherever they're at, they need to be included too. So I'm just saying, being the biggest school district should be on here, and maybe we can educate them too to do more language.
Thank you. I will note that.
Make a comment. In fact, if you are people are trying to do a few problems. What she do what like come see royal kids Lakota why this what she do my what she do what I want to focus on the purpose. For years, I've been pushing for Lakota language because that's where we came from. That's our inherent sovereignty. So I hope that we could put something in there to remember that the purpose of this committee is to acknowledge or remember that Lakota language is our sole source of sovereignty that comes from inherent sovereignty. Because without language, we don't have identity. And but today I'm very, very proud of some of our young people are starting to pick it up on their own, and that's amazing to see that it's going to at least come back through them. Our forefathers and foremothers, our chiefs and our medicine men, medicine people always talk about the language. Our language is a sacred language. That we use it to communicate with our ancestors and the spirits that come into the ceremony. And it's very important that on the other parts that we don't restrict ourselves to Sage's way or Royal's way or Dwayne's way of teaching. That I want them to be able to teach however they want to teach. And you know what? We might find that innovative and exemplary strategies that could propel us forward faster. But then I also remind ourselves that we're losing more people than we're gaining. We lost a lot of relatives that spoke the language, but we don't gain that many more. So we have to kind of have a sense of urgency on this. And last meeting, some of the people are not here from the last meeting. I wish you would come back and stay focused and stay on course. There's a tendency to hoard information. There's a tendency to hoard your curriculum. I think we should, share that with everybody. So, we might come to a, amazing result if we see what you're doing and what Kaneshiwa is doing, or what Lita is doing, those could lead into something amazing. And there's a tendency to hoard our work because we're saying it's copyrighted, and we should avoid doing that because we're all family, we're all related, we're all Sichangos, we're all Lakota, we're Kikuan, we're Shakui. Myself, I really push for learning naturally in the home, because I learned that. But I realized that some of our young generations grew up in a home where the language is absent. And I really want to, part of this is to strengthen, I think it will strengthen our Lakota traditional government. It will strengthen your Tiwahe, your Chospaye, your Ospaye, and Hayata. And like I mentioned before, there's two governments going at the same time. It's always been that way. But we never acknowledge the traditional Lakota government. That it's within us. It's always been there. And it's still important to us. That is our sovereignty too. Because in 1934, when they imposed this IRA government upon us, we didn't realize that the IRA was designed to destroy us, to assimilate. It was designed to, it was part of the final plan, the final solution to destroy us. Remember that term, to kill the Indian and save the man. That was in, I'm glad it was brought up in Deb Holland's report on the Indian boarding schools. So we have to remind ourselves that the policies that give us access to the federal resources that was actually designed to kill us. So now we can change that around. We'll turn our people around so we go over that edge of the cliff. So we got to pull everybody back. So I just want us to remember those things. Remember our relatives that have gone before us, that have left the trail for us to pick up. Some of them left maybe some books or recordings, and those will become useful as we continue on. There's going to be a need to record those speakers today. Then we have LLC stuff going around, good materials and things like that. So it's just that the Oyate, they tried to sell it back to the Oyate, so that caused something. It caused some conflict. Well, Lakota is very important. If you learn all these, the Lakota laws, I call them these Lakota virtues, you start exercising Lakota. When you shake hands with your elders or your relatives, your friends, that's Lakota. You're doing it. So I want to make sure that we have a hochoka for this language. I want to make sure that there's a place for it, there's a home for it here, because it's been pushed out for so long. It's been pushed out in the charters, it's been pushed out in the Constitution, it's been pushed out of the policies, but now we're putting it right back in. Putting it back in, we're putting the heart to have power. At least this is something. This is something to get things going. It's the energy that, what I want to see is that I want this to move by itself. Even if we stepped away, it will keep going. There will be no excuses to stop. I want all this teaching, all this movement, all this energy to go by itself. Even though some of us, if we leave this life, that we continue this work. Don't stop. Because maybe one of the elders passed away and we can't stop. You have to rely on each other. That's what it is. Rely on each other and hold each other accountable. And you yourself, you get a commitment, a personal commitment to do this. And that's what's going to move us forward. And respecting each other and sharing our information, we're going to move together. I can't do this by myself. Nobody can do this by themselves. We need each other to move forward together. Thank you. Okay.
Anybody else have anything, any comment regarding the document? I was, as you were speaking, Wixie, maybe we should talk about or discuss or address in the instance that one of these programs dissolves or transitions into something different. I feel like maybe that should be included here in the committee composition. So I'll come up, I'll get with Eric and we'll get some language for that as well. Dissolving or transitioning. Now, what I'm picturing for this committee is that a member from each of these departments will come together and sit around the table. So that way information can be shared, updates can be given, even just open discussion on what has worked and what hasn't. And just accountability on pushing programs. Can we have a seat anywhere? Welcome. Pushing programs to evaluate and really assess if their practices are working or not, and supporting each other. But one of the biggest reasons why I want to pull all of them together is for group funding. I think, if I'm part of this committee and I apply for a grant and then it only helps my program, if it's a small grant, that's fine, but if we have the potential to apply for a large government grant, I don't want to put any of these entities against each other as competitors. I would rather have them apply together as a group, as the Rosebud Sioux Tribe, and that way any finances that come through can benefit all of them. I do know that Sintegleshka University is funded by themselves, and I don't think we have any representation from there here. So I'll reach out and make a phone call too and visit with somebody over there about if they're wanting to be a part of this committee or not. Yes?
I'm looking at the board over there and all the other types of committees, and I wonder if this committee will be on the same level as that. And if so, I know from experience that at-large members sometimes make up quorum. And so if you have, which we all know that there are fluent speakers that aren't affiliated with any of these organizations, is there opportunity to add some at-large community members?
Yes, let's add them in there. I also need some feedback on number 6. I've been going back and forth if we should keep the Community Chairman's Association in here. The intent was so that they could help us set up learning centers in each community. That's why I wanted them included, and then they have their own committee that they could report to. So I don't know, is there any objection to them being in there? No? Okay. And then, how many at-large seats for fluent speakers? And the last time we met, I did say that I acknowledged that I didn't include any seats for any of our medicine men here. And I'm not sure if we want to include them or if they are going to be if they're going to take part in a different area, like for hire or, as a teacher. So I didn't know how to include them. So I need some guidance on that from all of you.
Yes. I was going to suggest maybe just reach out to them, and whoever shows up, whoever wants to be here will be here, and we could talk about how many seats we might have, or like medicine men or anything like that.
Okay.
Do you think it would be possible to run this committee more by consensus instead of Robert's Rules of Order? Because then you don't have to worry about quorum to the point. Pushkami there, whoever shows up are the people that are supposed to show up, especially if it's a committee that's on the same level as Sioux over here.
Okay.
I like that idea.
So I'll put that here with this committee, can choose not to follow Robert's Rules of Order.
Probably call it traditional religion protocol. Whoever wants to share can share. Because a lot of times you can't call a meeting if the chairman is not here.
Could you spell only chair for me?
O-N-N-I-C-I-Y-A.
See with the dot above it?
I don't use diacritics. Diacritics,
One little dot does all that.
All right, that's added. So for the at-large, can we do 2 at-large seats? One for a speaker and one for the medicine man?
If you just made a number 11 under section 2, it would put elders and spiritual leaders. So that door should always be open for our elders. And sometimes they need to come in and chew us out.
We're looking at cousin over there.
Comment on city,
Yes, go ahead, Sage.
just on the third paragraph on ordinance, proposed ordinance, with collectively applying for neighborhood culture permits. For entities like myself that are solely relying on philanthropy and for just entered into the federal grant area, is there in this committee, especially in a time whenever you don't have members there that may not understand that process to protect entities like Wakanje, Kokechi, any of the other ones, I can't speak for the other ones, but I can speak for Wakanje, Kokechi. If we're depending on private donations and these grants that we're fair and making sure that we can sustain the operations that we're heading towards, because we're moving towards establishing the K-5 Institute and going beyond there. So it's just so that that was just my comment there with that one. I don't know the process exactly. So just seeing that as the new forms that, so that we're not.
You don't want to.
I don't want to be like taking money from other entities either, but I know that things are changing with grant applications. That if there is true collaboration between each of the entities, that we're all at the same table, or have almost like an MOU in place, so that when we do business, that everybody's accountable for holding up their end of the bargain if we're moving forward and applying collectively that way. Because it is hard to do that if we don't have capacity to operate the entity when it's one or two people doing it. So I think that would be a good practice. And then I know that some of these institutes also have their own departments, HR departments, things like that, finance departments. So if it's a collective one, there would have to be. I don't know if it's under our ordinance or if that's something that's outside of who would do the reporting. If it's a federal grant or if it's a private donation, who does the reporting? That would be very important. I do apologize. I have kids that teachers there to pick up and it's possible to pick up then. But I have Oscar here knows everything about all kinds of stuff too. Those are the one things that the thing other than that. Yeah, I want to concur with what she wanted to repeat. Are doing anything different that's already been done since that part of it.
Can I? Yeah. So, what are your questions? So, you're concerned about the grant reporting, the grant specs as far as, it affecting other people's funding. And I guess something that I was just reaching and thinking, but I'm not sure if that's the point you were trying to make. You don't want anything to hinder your ability to seek out your private funding. Okay. Go ahead.
And just kind of going after what Sage said with that one, that was one of my concerns when I was reading this ordinance, with the grants and the same thing, because with Lakota too, it's the same, we're in the same position where we have to go out and we have to raise our own funds in order to carry on the program and stuff. So, like, how does that work, and what are the procedures of that look like for this committee? And do we have to report I mean, I have all of these questions just based on the funding part of it. And I know it's pretty broad to kind of keep things open, but it brings up those questions for me too. It's very similar to what Sage is talking about. Because once again, we're hitting our 1 year mark, and are we going to have another cohort? And does that put stipulations and stuff on us going out and doing fundraising on our own? As far as how do we apply that back to our own program, or do we have to share it individually too? So that's my concern.
Those are great questions, and it's the reason why we're having this meeting today is so we don't pass something that hinders people. And I don't have all the answers, which is why I'm so grateful for the hearing and everybody's attendance here, because you can make me aware of that and we can move forward with making the adjustments to this ordinance. And you weren't in here when we first started, but what I let everybody that's in attendance know is normally they have one hearing and then we take everybody's feedback and then go on to council for that, with changes or without changes, for the council to pass. But because this is such an important, sensitive issue, not like the rest of them aren't, but this is the heart of our people, like Sheffield said. So I'm willing to have several meetings so we can come to an agreement until everybody is in agreement with this. However, I would like to set a deadline of February to be completely finished with everything, so we can get this to the council meetings in March.
Because we declared a state of emergency.
Yeah, because we did declare it a state of emergency. So I do appreciate that, and maybe we can set some specific guidelines as far as the grants go. Like if it's a grant that could be granted to the Rosebud Sioux tribe, that's a huge grant. Like the A&A grant, for example, that's a humongous grant. If that can help all of the programs and not just one, then I want it to be able to. But I don't want to take from the school or the Lakota. I don't want it to take from any of that. And that's one of the reasons why I keep bringing up University as well, because they have funding. they make their own funding through Pell Grants and student loans and whatnot. So, that was just another concern of mine too. I'm not saying they're not needy and that they don't need funding, but I know that they don't need as much funding that some of our programs that are just now starting or have been trying to get up off the ground do need. No disrespect to SGU. Yes?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pam, Health and Water. I guess my whole vision of this committee wasn't to do any of that. These programs and these schools, they all have ways of getting their funding, but what I was thinking was that the funding wouldn't have anything to do with it. I thought that this committee that was going to be created was going to come up with a solid idea of how each one of these programs that are listed under Section 2 were going to work, how they were going to implement. So if it started at school, the school age, let's say K through 3, what were they going to be doing for K through 3? What's their teaching in it? What's 4th through 6? What's 7th through 12? What's their teaching? What all are they teaching in that? And how is that going to affect a program that can go out in the evenings? So if they're going out in the evenings, what are they teaching in the evenings to combine with what the school's teaching K through 3rd, 4th through 6th, 7th through 12th? That's what I thought this was going to do. I didn't think that we were going to get involved and start telling people who can and can't be writing for grants because this one grant is the biggest grant, we'll divvy it out. I didn't think it was going to be like that. I just assumed that this was going to be for everyone to learn to work together on how they're going to teach this language, how they're going to teach this culture. Nothing to do with money. Once again, money got involved in it, and money is going to create a problem, just like what it's doing today for our people. That's one thing that they always said was money was Wakan. And Wakan didn't mean that it was high-spirited or anything. It meant, Wakan meant that it was something that could be similar to Iktomi, good or bad. So for me, I don't think there should be anything in this that says that we're going to tell people how we're going to deal with money. I think that it should be just a come together where they can come up with ideas on how we're gonna keep this language going from school to home and how to keep it practiced at home. Giving them resources at home rather than tearing up a grant or fighting for monies. Because in all reality, it shouldn't be about that. We should just be focused on how we're going to make our programs and schools and everything come together and come up as one. That's what I thought this was going to do. I didn't. So I guess me, myself, in my personal opinion, I'm against even getting involved. So this, what is it, that third one?
On what page?
On this?
The second page?
Yeah, the second page of this. That third one, to collectively apply for language and culture grants. I don't think that we should. I think do you think each one should be able to apply for their own, but be able to come to the committee and say, I want to apply for this grant, and this is how I want to use this grant from 8 to 5 and then from 6 to 9. This is how I'm going to use it, and this is how I'm going to keep the language going out of my program. That's how I think it should be. So I don't even think that they should be inside of there to say any
Maybe not collectively apply, but maybe to make sure that it's reported what you're applying for.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a record of who's
That's why,
applying for what.
that's why I'm saying, take this out, but yet they'll still come to this committee and still say, you know, I'm gonna apply for this grant.
Yeah.
He's applying for this grant under his program too, but this is how I'm gonna use it 8 to 5 during my working hours, but this is how I'm gonna get my workers to utilize it in their communities that they're gonna be designated to from 6 to 9. That's how I was thinking.
Yeah, I had questions about that too, because as I was looking at these organizations, they're also different, and their funding streams are also different. So I think it would be kind of a nightmare to try to track that and whatnot. So I really like, and that takes care of that if you just delete that out of there. One other thing, I was thinking of Head Start. Could they be on the list? Because I
Yes.
think they've got. And then the third thing was, to Bill's point about the membership responsibilities, if we follow the traditional media protocols, then number 3 needs to be like deleted and changed, I think, on the ordinance. And the last thing I'll say was, to the point, I hear like the spirit of this ordinance is try to get people together to share information and kind of lift all votes. And I think what you can do in some of your council structure is develop a template. So when people come to meet, they share certain kinds of information, like, are you applying for grants? What are they? What's the timeline? Where? What's the purpose? You know, just not to, you know, kind of get into people's business, but so other people are aware. And then I'm not sure how your SRO office fits in here, because like I know at Redco, I learned of a grant, and then from another meeting, I heard somebody else talking about it. So then I told Redco people, you better check with SRO. I think somebody, so I don't know what their processes and protocols are. I think that would be helpful to know in developing a template, at least for information sharing. Not real detailed, like, you know, down to the pennies and whatnot, but I really support this effort, Sherry. I think it brings people together. It creates, because you don't see any committee like that currently. So I think that's what, if I'm understanding this ordinance, that's what it's trying to accomplish, right?
It is,
Okay.
you're right. The purpose is to bring all of the departments together that work with language and have them collaborating and communicating so we can push forward. And I noted that. Go ahead.
You guys are done?
Yeah, yes.
Those of you that don't know me, my name is Rita. I like to use my married name, Brandis. People, I fool them. If I use my maiden name, then they'll know I'm Lakota. But anyway, I'll just give you a little bit of where I'm coming from, my background with language. Back in, I'm dating myself, if that's okay, because now you have to listen. In '76, I worked on a program called Preschool Bilingual. It was a 3-year pilot project, and the director was Joe Marshall. And the purpose was to go out and assess the Head Start centers so we could look at the state of our language. Because if the children aren't speaking it, then we're on that path to the language dying out. So we assessed Head Start the best that we could, 5 of them. And I'm not sure, it was only a 3-year project. I'm not sure where that information ended up, but when the Tribal Ed Department was first created, that was one of the programs underneath it. So it just seemed to me, being involved in education, and my degree is in Lakota Studies, Secondary Ed. So I've always been involved with Lakota Studies, but we worked with St. Francis and Todd County and the tribe. But in reflection, it seemed like every 10 years or so, all the language people would get together and cut it. We'd be fighting, saying it's this way, no, it's that way. And we'd walk away and nothing would get done. And I sat here and that's what came to my mind, here we go. But I'm gonna, after doing all these language programs, being involved with language, I can reflect back now and to where I'm at, I said, I don't prioritize it being taught in the school because then we have all of these discussions and orthographies, blah, blah, blah. But I have to agree with what Pam said. When I first saw this paper and we had all these strikes, the one thing that stood out to me was this 7 to 25-year language plan. And I asked Anka, what does that look like? And for me, when you have a goal or a vision, I really think you need to take baby steps. We did a survey with the Oyata Networking Project. I was surveyed in Spring Creek, and the parents were saying, our children are coming home speaking a different Lakota. So we talked about that, but that's when the schools mandated teachers take 1 year of Lakota language. Well, when you don't say the pronunciations right, Utinsya, then you're teaching a whole different language and it could have different meanings. So then being fluent speakers, the children learning what their teacher knows if the language was kind of distorted. So to me, I had to think about that. I think it's really important. If we're going to teach language, I believe we have to hear it first. And our hope, I believe, is in the children, the young ones. And it's in the homes. The school year, the typical school year is 9 months. So when you have that 3 months no school, when they come back, we have to review and reteach them where they left off in May. So how do we teach our children without the help of the parents? I think that's a component we really need to consider, is the parents supporting that, because they need that year-round, we don't give them a 3-month break. And it has to be supported everywhere. When I go, I was raised in a boarding school, K-12, but I look at it this way, when I was in the 9 months out of the year, I was immersed in English. The other 3 months when I would go home or during the vacations, I was immersed in Lakota. So that I managed to remember, to hear it, to understand it. I eventually, when I learned to write, learned how to write it. But because of that being broken up like that, I struggled for fluency. And I still do, but yeah, I understand everything you guys are saying about me. But anyway, that's my belief, is I believe we need to focus. Instead of, to me, it just seems like it's unattainable, the 7 to 25 year. Because how much of it, is there going to be that commitment? We should take baby steps and teach. How do we get the parents involved? Because we're teaching 2 generations at the same time. And how can that be done? I've been involved with the language, and I just, to my own personal opinion, it's kind of been a lot of loss of time. And I think the focus should be on as soon as they're born, and those young mothers, those young fathers, to teach them. They can learn with their children. It's hard to teach an adult learner. You know what I'm saying? Because our minds are already trained in the English way of a language. But when you can get those little ones and teach them, it's more easier. So myself, I let everybody else squabble about orthographies and dictionaries, blah, 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 but I think we need to take that takoja and say, da ichan and ish, you know, that's where the learning needs to begin. So I look at all this fancy stuff about committees and that, and again, what Pam, I think, it just hit my spirit when I thought of, okay, there's gotta be money involved here. And it just seems that way, it distorts the whole picture. As a tribe, we need to prioritize language. And when we're not doing it, then we're struggling, just like this. Look at our council. They're all at each other like this because that's the Washichu language. If they understood, even understood Lakota, that respect would be in there. That unspoken, those unspoken behaviors embedded in the language. So, I myself, I mean, I think we need to rethink what, you know, a plan is. How are we going to collectively move forward, all have the same vision? What did Sitting say? That's quick. But if we all are in agreement, consensus, I think we can move forward instead of trying to, oh, they're doing this and that, or assessments, things like that. We can assess. I was told if your children aren't playing speaking Lakota, then they're not learning it. That's a form of assessment for me. You know, I've worked with assessments trying to deal with language, but I thought it was the right thing to do, all this curriculum business. But where I'm at now, it's in speaking it so they hear the proper pronunciations and those little ones can start to speak it. Because I think college, I mean, it's all a grand thought, but I don't see results of it today. Maybe that's where we need to begin, is how do we approach that. I tried to plan when I went there with the language, but it became a political football. It was about money. We had a plan to go out into the communities. I was working with Rosalie Little Thunder at that time, and how we could approach it at the community level. So I've kind of been around the block a few times, but that's where I'm at today in my own thinking. And I don't know if people agree with it, whatnot, because we're so caught up in this Western way of teaching. But where our language is in the home is where it should begin. How can we support that?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to respond for a second. I appreciate that, and I wish that everybody, I wish that Pam and a few of you were able to attend the first meeting that we had, because there's a lot of really good conversation. Some of the things that you're bringing up, I understand that language needs to be at home. There was talk of a study that was done on how many language speakers we have, and I believe the number was 345 fluent Lakota speakers, which I'm not trying to go against you by any means or what you're saying or argue with you, but some people do not have the ability to learn at home because there are no speakers there. So there's a lot of things that, you know, from the whole reason for this is because it's not to be westernized. I feel like we need to think of these two worlds that we live in, because we have this Lakota way of life, and we got pushed into this IRA government, we got pushed into this westernized, colonized way of thinking. Okay, but within that, there are tools there that we could use to benefit us. There are things there, processes that could be used to benefit us, and we need to take advantage of both of those. And if I know that there's talk about not mentioning funding or money, but without that, none of this is going to happen. because that's the main thing that upset everybody here today. But what about my school? How is it going to continue without funding? How are we going to pay our teachers without funding? So we just need to be honest that money is going to have to be a part of this. And I really feel, you know, the last meeting that we had, we talked a lot about a strategic plan, and that doesn't have to happen today or tomorrow or in a year. That can be developed if it's 25 years out. We talked about funding for language, non-competitive grants, and for the council, directive for the council to go request non-match grants. We got into a whole conversation about everything from our artifacts to curriculum. And one of the things that we talked about was some of the stuff that you addressed, and thank you for addressing it again. It was, we don't want to fight over curriculum. We don't want to fight over whose way is the right way. We just would like to move forward and see the language revitalized. We talked about this committee bringing back our societies. We talked about gang affiliation and how that is because we're a people of society, and now that we don't have those societies for our young men and women and our elders and our men and women, a lot of the young people lean towards gangs. We talked about a portion of the tribe's revenue to be generated, that's generated toward language. We discussed so many different things, acknowledgement of language, the ceremonies in language. We even talked about our calendar and recognizing the traditional calendar as a Oyate. So we did discuss a lot of things, and I want everybody to know that I'm going to be mindful, and I am mindful of all the feedback that everybody's giving, and I'm going to try to find a diplomatic way to fit everything that everybody wants or doesn't want in this document. So it doesn't have to be like, I'm against this document because it has this in there. Today's the day to speak, I don't want that in there, can we strike that? Yes, we can. So just please, you know, if there's something you don't like, please speak up on it. Please let it be known, and we will definitely work on it. We have our lawyer that we can lean toward, and he can help us with any particulars. Foster has the floor, and then
yeah, so a couple points. And following what you said just now, I see on here, like it says to coordinate and establish language classes, media outlets for language learning. And exactly to your point, like who's doing that and how is that funded? Because it is going to cost money. And if we do have to have, I agree, we do have to have some sort of funding excerpt in here. But what if this committee, and this goes to my second point of like, I believe that every committee in itself should be balanced. Speaking for us at the school, like, you know, I'm not fluent. None of our staff are fluent. We have fluent speakers that come in and teach us. And because of that, you know, let's be real, not all speakers can teach, right? So we have to fill in each other like a puzzle, right? We have to uplift one another and fill in our disadvantages and uplift our advantages. And so to hear, like with these committee members, how can we find a balance of these, what are we at, 13 different positions now? How can we find a balance between those that are fluent speakers that have the cultural knowledge, but those that are also well adversed in, you know, finding grants, applying for them, understanding the language of federal government, right? So that brings me to my point of like qualifications, I guess you can say. And I really hate to do that, but from, you know, where I come from and my understanding through my education, like that has to be done. And maybe this committee in terms of the grant, like what separates us from St. Francis is we're a school. We are eligible for school-related grants. But Colonia is qualified for nonprofit grants. You know, there's different departments that all of us are affiliated with, right? Mm-hmm. What if this committee finds those grants and sends it to the people that it applies for, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a one-shoe-fits-all type of thing, language. And so, how can a language program and immersion school and an adult program, how can they find those grants? Because us and Colonia, we share the same finance, but they're not always looking for separately, if that makes sense. And so what if this committee therefore, I don't know, helps searches for those grants or helps apply for those grants per se, using the fluent speakers to fill in the language component of what's important. If it's a cultural camp grant, how can we fill in that grant application with cultural knowledge? How can we use that knowledge of the Black Hills into that grant to win it, right? Let's find the pattern of what really wins these grants and let's bring the money home, maybe, but really use that to our advantage, right? Use that diversity for our advantage. So that's one point. And then the second point that I had, the 8th point, the review and improve all language, history, and culture related research. To me, that sounds like an IRB task. And I know Nora, you, me, and Rosemary had this conversation in the past. When I did my studies for undergrad, and it was non-medical, so I didn't have to go through IHS. I didn't have to go through the medical review board. I called around, didn't get a straight answer. They just said, ask Rodney. Like, she Rodney, can you sign this off? Yeah, sure, it signs off, and I got my approval. But to me, like, the tribe itself needs an IRB that someone in this committee can sit on, because that's an IRB task, not necessarily language and culture. I don't know, activities, practices that you could do. That's more Western scholarly. That's a different section from this, in my opinion. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, that's good. I do know that we created the herb committee, and that's for educational purposes only. So we did discuss a IRB for each different round, right? And then that one person from those would create another collective group, but we're still ironing that out. So I don't know. But it's great, good points. Do you all want to remove that, strike it, leave it? Strike it?
Yeah, it'd be like another layer of tape you gotta go through.
Okay. What are you striking? Number 8, to review and approve all Lakota language, history, and culture related studies and proposals submitted by outside entities, colleges, universities, private groups, and individuals. We'll send them to the tree council. Just kidding.
I think also that the 2008 resolution already covers that too. It kind of protects us from like outside entities coming in and doing a documentary on us, or
It does.
or like anything like that. And the 2012 resolution is mainly all about orthography.
That, 2012?
And I don't know if this is like heavily enforced at all, because I see, are they talking about whenever they say the Rosebud who tried Lakota language orthography, is that Albert's? Yeah? That's the Albert orthography?
Which resolution are you looking at?
The 2012?
Wayne brought us 2.
Oh, I didn't get it.
295?
343.
Yeah, 343.
Yeah, he didn't get it.
Okay.
Did you get it?
I have it.
No, I don't have it.
Is it Albert?
Two different things.
That's two different
There's
ones.
like,
I think, I don't know, try to get rid of this resolution. Because I mean, like, as far as orthography, I didn't even know about this one. I thought it was the same as Albert's, you know what I mean? And it's kind of a messy subject. Me personally, whenever I write in Lakota, I use pictures. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, this is just a messy topic, and I think, you know, it's not really, you know, I saw people put out a memo about, or not a memo, but on Facebook about Scott using the LLC to put out something, things like that. So I don't think this is really followed anyways, and we should just kind of try to get rid of it if we can. Maybe until something more solid is established, you know, orthography with, you know, more books, more dictionaries.
See, and That's what the intent of the committee work is going to be, to define all of that and do all this homework.
Yeah.
He got mad at me.
I would say, Sage left me his notes. He wrote that down too, is like, how do we find the funding for resources and activities to fund like a transcriber per se? Because there's a bunch of material out there, but it's just not in the official orthography. So therefore, when people say stuff like, come help us, you know, there's just not much out there. So his notes is just like, this is probably later on in the future, like tasks at hand, but something to consider.
Okay, yeah, one of the comments was that we have a coordinator, and that this committee, that coordinator reports to this committee and works with them. So that's gonna take tribal funding. So, I don't know, Pam, budget and finance?
No funding. It is Lakota's class, so should be no funding. Come from the heart.
How you need gas money to get to class? She always likes to pretend like I fight with her.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, just as you was talking to Foster, and then me coming in here, and I just now heard of this meeting, and I was invited by a friend, so I came. But I wasn't aware that, I just think you talked about a coordinator of some sort, but maybe if they could, like they do at council, old business and new business. So had I been able to see in notes what was said and discussed last meeting, you know, I could have stayed out of trouble. Yeah. So maybe if you could share notes, because you read them off, so maybe for the next meeting, that might help people to see what was said, so we don't repeat.
Or send the video out too, just be recorded right now. There's one thing that you could probably look at is all previous resolutions are obsolete or incorporated. Yeah.
Incorporated except for 2012.
Oh, to add it?
343.
Yeah. Well, there's one that was handed out that was actually tabled. And that's why it doesn't have a number and it still has scribbles on it, the 2003-14. It looks like it was tabled from Education Committee. But only tabling motions, that's where they go to die. Yeah, they do.
That seems like useful language. I don't know about these kind of things, but while you were talking about the issue of preventing the seeking of funding, I just happened to be reading an unrelated ordinance at that moment, and there's a sentence in here. This is about teacher licensure, so it says a teacher shall have a license if blah, 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 but then they have this sentence that says, this part shall not prohibit a school board from employing a person who does not hold a license under this, and that surprised me, and I just kind of said it at the same time. So I don't know if language like that is possible, where you say like, we're gonna seek funding, but this shall not prohibit anybody from seeking their own funding. I don't know if that would help me.
Okay, I guess I just struck that and I changed it.
Oh, we struck it, maybe it's irrelevant.
Yeah, I struck it and I changed it to read, that entities must report grants that they are applying for, and, yeah, that they must report grants, and I just left it as that, just the reporting that we talked about, striking it. Oh, and to help assist find grants for the language learner programs, because Foster added them.
I think our goal is to try to make this kind of general
Yeah,
and not too detailed. We're gonna
and the committee
complicate the
can,
matter.
then you guys can fight after that,
Yeah.
without me. You guys can battle it out. No, but like the stuff Pam was talking about, that's what she thought this committee would do. That's something that the committee can do. But the more detailed we get in law, then it really restricts what that committee can do. So it's good to be broad, so that way you guys can call Eric in and have him interpret stuff for you. I'm just kidding. I know, poor Eric. Yeah.
And then I think a lot of these programs listed already do that anyways, like it's kind of their job, and we're just kind of coming together to brainstorm and make sure everyone's funded, make sure no one gets left out. And then are we also gonna like hold people accountable, like, hey, I saw you got 10 million for this, what are you doing with it? You know what I mean?
That's why I wanted the reporting in there, and I wanted, so one of the things that we discussed at the last meeting was that sometimes these grants come out, and Anka is the one who brought it up, that they're very competitive. And it not only puts tribes against each other, but it puts each of these individual language programs within one tribe against each other. So that's why that language was entered without, you know, the thought of restricting people from applying for their own funding. So maybe we can look at that language and that you just came across and try to reconfigure how we're going to, you know, maybe we put a threshold on there, like if there are grants over a specific amount of money, then it's collectively shared, or I don't know.
I think what Sage is trying to get at is he just doesn't want this to compromise anything that they have going, because they're like actively doing it. They have students that show up Monday through Thursday.
And you guys do have basically a 25-year plan, because the plan is every year you add a grade. And
Great, but we're reconsidering our design.
yeah, but I mean, it's a plan. And so I don't want like the tops of the plans or anything to make anyone feel hindered. And we can definitely change the number there if you guys want to go with just 7, or if you all would like to just go with adopt the 7-year plan. For starters, we can change it, or we can just leave it. It's up to you.
Maybe we should create a plan first and then figure out how long it's going to be. Because, I mean, from birth to whatever.
The reason why I was pushing for a 25-year plan is that you can make those short-term goals in there within that 25 years. So if you're gonna set a goal to achieve within 1 year, put that in the 25-year plan. But I just want this thing to go
That's
far.
why we're tweaking it.
But cutting it down to 7 years, short change.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. It just doesn't really matter to me, but I'm just saying, I think we should have a plan. What do we want this whole committee, this whole concept of language, what do we want it to look like when we're done collectively, beginning from birth? Where do we begin to teach language?
This goes through and passes.
I mean, that's my vision, I guess, because I don't know if we produce speakers.
I just want to see a well-oiled machine
There you go.
Yeah.
that we're sharing information, we're sharing best practices, we're learning how to assess. And one thing that I learned is people are terrified about the word review.
Yeah,
They're
we
scared.
realize that.
Yeah.
That word scares people. I'm like, okay, review it. Lots of
Yeah.
mistakes, so I depend on review. You know, one thing that this committee can do as well, and I would volunteer to help, is to draft that plan. So when this committee comes through, I can draft it. And when we had our first meeting, I said, don't think of me as here today, Sherry, the council person who's trying to force anything on anybody. I'm gonna listen, just have my ears open and take in whatever you guys have to say to try and create something that makes your programs get pushed towards the forefront for funding, so that the council and the people think that know that it's important. and that we can make sure that language doesn't stop, that we don't just continue to argue about the right way and the wrong way to do it. Because most of us are tired of that. We just want to learn. And last time, you know, one thing that I really got excited about was the camp that you spoke about, the language camp. He said we should just have a summer camp and start a 6 to 8 week summer camp. And that's something I'm really excited for. I would like to do that. I feel like that would have other benefits to our young people as well, because right now, our young people go to college and a lot of times they come home within a year, the first year, because they're not used to being away from home. And throughout the summer, if they do little things that help them learn to be away from mom and dad or Uchi and Lala, then they can grow like that. So I feel like those things that Dwayne talked about would be really helpful.
I was just gonna throw out there, also like with all these programs and stuff, there's kind of like a void with adult learning. I know there's a lot of children being taught things, but then they get home and their parents don't know what they're even saying or anything. And then it's like the opposite for me. You know, we're like the only adult program on here, but I get home and like the only one that really knows Lakota is my daughter. She goes to Todd County, but you know she knows what I'm saying, but you know I think if more adults practice this, maybe even for the summer camp idea, invite whole families instead of just individual kids. Invite their whole family to come. Maybe take 5 families this summer, or you know for a certain amount of time. Not too sure. We can talk about that later too, but and then also just little small things for like having someone record the weather for Channel 93, you know, every single day. You know, whoever's here in this building, say in Lakota, the weather forecast is like an easy thing to do every day, and it's more Lakota content to put out there. I kind of wanted to advocate for more content to be created, because like content, whenever you're learning Spanish or anything, you can listen to the radio all day and eventually it'll click. Watch TV all day and it's gonna click. But with Lakota, you know, there's Berenstain Bears, there's only 20 episodes, like I have them all memorized. I listen to Dwayne all the time in front of the fireplace. Like every time I see a fireplace behind you. Think about you told me in the stories. But yeah, so you know, once we get this up and running, I just wanted to advocate for more of that. I might have to get going.
Thank you for saying that. I feel like another portion of the funding, the reason why that was included in there was the collective, was because in this we included the Community Chairman's Association so that they could create learning centers for not just youth but adults as well. And I guess we need to just find some different ways to try and help fund them. And I wish the tribe could just fund this. I really do. But we fight for funding all the time. But I do thank you for saying that about the adults and the families, because I feel like there's people like my age, like Donna, I'm so thankful she gets to be in the program, because when we graduated, we had to choose. Do we want to learn our language and hang out here, or do we want to go to school and then make careers? So we had to make that choice, and it was a hard choice to make, but we made it, and now we're non-speakers. Well, she's turning into a speaker, so that's good. So thank you for mentioning the adults, because we want to continue the learning at home. The adults are going to need to learn as well. But that's where the thought of the learning centers and the Community Chairman's Association would come into place.
Yeah, even like small things, like maybe calling in programs, like just I'm thinking like at DPP, everything's labeled in Lakota, all stop, everything's in Lakota. Try to get more Lakota out there. The tribe offers like a tax incentive, or or some type of recognition, or good job. Thank you for caring about the language. Just try to get more people to care about it. And get more tribal programs in here with us to get their ideas and see what they can help with.
It's a great idea. Also,
get more things out there.
To comment on the content portion as well, the Economic Development Committee meeting on Tuesday, IT reports, and there's a language hour, and there's a position there that hasn't been filled. So he wanted to invite the language programs to come sit in and talk or visit? Yes.
Like I agree with Colin, we do need, like the idea is good to have it in communities like that, but we need people that are gonna be there that can teach the language that are in there. We don't have that currently. You know, we have the Lakota program, which is great. It's probably the only adult learning program here. But we need to teach adults as well to help bridge the language from the elders who are fluent speakers down to our children. That's why it is important for us to create a adult learning program. And it's really essential, to be honest. I agree with Colin, there needs to be one Lakota around here, but everyone's going to argue about how it's spelled. You know, that's again, like I said, we have 7 documents. And you know, when it comes to adult learning, you have to understand that we have to hear something, right? We have to hear a word over 100 times before we actually lock it in, right? For kids 5, they only need to hear it once or 3 times, right? That's the difference. And so as adult learners, we got it, you know, it may seem very basic language that we're learning at first, but we scaffold it and we build it up, right? To be able to express how your morning was, how your day was, right? We don't start off like that, you know. It starts off very, very small, right? Do you like water? Do you like orange juice? Do you like coffee? Right? That's how it sounds in English, right? Yes, I like coffee. Yes, I like orange juice, right? So there's all these different things that we have to scaffold up. Well, there has been success in these programs, and a lot of them, you know, one of the main things they really pushed was a mentor program where you would hang out with one speaker and stand around. That was one of the things they did. And it is essential because we can only go so far. You know, we do need that interaction as adult learners to keep our language up, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And that's why it is important for adult learners. You know, we do need a program, you know, like a summer institute. That would definitely, because that's what I went through. I went through like 3 or 4 summer institutes, and they really empowered me to learn them. So that's something we need. But I am wary of tribal involvement in any language thing, to be honest. It does make me worried because of how the tribe has managed things in the past. So a lot of it has to do with, you know, like a lot of successful programs with other tribes aren't affiliated with their tribe. They've done it separately. And you know, because of how difficult it can be to get funding for these programs, to get grants to do the con stuff, you know. So it is going to be fundamental. I think all of us coming together is great. I don't think we need a committee for it. I think we should just come together, have a meal, talk about what we're doing, make an agenda. Like that's what I think should happen, you know. Personally, we need a committee because it feels like another barrier to get through if we're going to be running doing anything. That's just my insight. Really. I could be wrong here. Maybe I misunderstood someone, but that's how it feels.
Sure, I got a real notes. I got a sweat and I was waiting for me, but we was talking about this time thing. The first meeting, I thought we were going to be talking about Biden administration asking indigenous peoples to look at a 10-year time period. What are you going to do with your languages?
Yeah.
Now we're sitting in here, we're arguing about money, we're arguing about programs and things, and I don't know where this is going to all end up in, but there's already a time period set with Biden administration. Maybe there's something coming down the line from the Biden administration if we put a plan together. If we can have build an immersion school degree, and these our people are not going to learn the language unless the leadership shows it's that important that they want to learn. As soon as the leadership says, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go learn. I'm going to put everything on hold and I'm going to learn the language. If it's that important to them, but they're throwing the ball to someone else to do it all. Well, they sit there and they say, this is what I tried to do. They give the credit for it. That's administrators. But if you continue meeting, you let me know, I don't know if I'll come back. But this is going to be arguments of money and things. I got so much emotional decisions I got to make now. Grandchildren. What's going on in my life? I'm only a consultant. I'm not associated with the programs I help. Where I'm asked to come in.
But I'm really glad you came and thank you. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. I guess maybe I am guilty of fighting too much on council because this doesn't even feel like a fight to me.
Just tough it out.
I'm like, I think it's a lot. I think I just got thick skin. I guess everybody's kind of dwindling out and I don't want to lose everybody before we come to an agreement on another meeting date or with the changes that were talked about to move forward. I want to address, the comment about not creating a committee. So I'm 41 and I've heard people talk about language for years. And I remember when any elder that walked through the room spoke Lakota. But all those elders have changed now. And a lot of them have gone to be with our ancestors. So now you see an elder, you don't know, it's not a guarantee that they speak the language. Creating this committee is going to give our tribal council and our leadership somebody to look to, somebody to lean on, and it's going to give them accountability because this committee is going to have a time to come report and get assistance from this council, whether that be financial, whether that just be at Washington, D.C. level. We talked about, competitive grants. They should be non-competitive. There should be more funding. Should this tribal council seek out the Catholic Church and ask them to provide funding to restore our language and our culture? There's things that we need to be doing and getting on that path to do. And I understand people's concern about mixing that, but in my opinion, this is just my opinion, if we could pull every speaker and do the mentorship apprentice and work with them and have that bridge with the teacher and hire them, I would love that if we could pull every speaker and that's their job, is to just teach the language. But I just don't want us to feel like we're fighting here over anything, because I don't think we are. We're just discussing, and I want this document to be good. And the reason why the committee consists of everybody and not this body here is because these people are the experts. You guys are all the experts that have been working with the language, and I'm not saying I wouldn't trust the council to handle these things. I just know that they have so much other things that they're working on, that we're working on, and this is going to get pushed to the back burner, like it has for the 42 or 41 years that I've been alive. So because of everybody's passion within these programs, that's why I want to pull everybody together. And I want to do it officially through an ordinance so that it's recognized by the people and nobody's saying like, oh, that's so-and-so, I'm not going to their meeting. But so there's accountability for all the programs to come together. And it doesn't belong to one, oh, SG's putting that on, or oh, St. Francis is putting that on, so it's the tribe as a whole. So that's the purpose behind it. I'm not, like I said in the beginning of the meeting, I'm not by any way trying to make our language or culture, bind it to IRA government or that, colonized thought and philosophy. I'm just trying to use it as a tool for us to have more progress.
So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about, listening to everybody and stuff, and then looking at all the information and everything that's been provided, is that I actually kind of like the idea of the committee, not in the sense of like the regulations part of it, but being there as a support system for all the language programs. And I say that because after talking with, you know, our friends down in Cherokee and Oklahoma, you know, their tribal president literally has put the language as his forefront platform. And now, you know, they just reopened this huge building, their old casino, as like this whole like language learning center. And they've moved so far into the future with the language. And I think this is the first step for us in holding, you know, sorry to say this, but like council accountable for those same things in the same manner, the same way.
I agree.
But as a support system, like from the committee, I see that, and I don't know, I kind of like the idea of that to some degree. I understand all the other concerns that are wrapped around it, but I think overall this does bring it to light and does make it seem more like something is being done, more visible. And then having a place to go to be able to make those decisions and stuff. Because, you know, coming down the line, because of what, you know, that she had talked about with the government even, there's going to be a lot of grants and funding opportunities come open through the government side of things for language programs, language, you know, the school systems, everything. I mean, even down to like workforce stuff. And so just kind of prepping for that. And I think that's, I mean, I can see the reason for it. But I also don't think that it should be too restrictive on it.
I agree.
But I kind of like the idea of having that and having our tribe actually finally step up and say, like what, you know, like she said, we're making this a priority. Because when I do look at programs like Cherokee, you know, I mean, they brought back their language literally by making it number one priority for the tribe.
And there was talk at the last meeting to strengthen 20/20/80. I just didn't hand it to Lloyd yet because we found out Lloyd is leaving. He's going to be gone in March. So everybody's swarming him. So I'll probably visit with Eric and him and see how we can strengthen this 20/80. And because in here it says that, I don't think it says state of emergency, like those specific words, but it just, oh yeah, it does. It says declares a state of emergency with the loss of language fluency. So thank you all for saying that we need to acknowledge all of these documents in here. I'll add that. And does everybody want to have a third meeting, or do you want to take emails and send the draft and everyone just give a thumbs up through the email? How do you want to do that? We could do I could do a shared document on Google, or what do you want? Google, or like a shared document?
Alan wants to meet.
You want to have a meeting?
Yeah.
So show of hands for who wants to have a third meeting.
I'm not gonna vote because I wasn't at the first one, but I think the important point is, do you have what you need to take forward?
Yeah, I do, but I just want to make sure that the final draft after all the changes.
Yeah, you should have a meeting if people want to meet again.
Okay, and I promise it will be quicker. This was quicker than the last meeting. We were here till like, what, 5:15?
Yeah.
The last meeting?
Because I was talking.
No, you shared a really, hey, could you share that story that you shared last time? Since we're being recorded, about how we should treat
The language?
how we should treat the language like a relative.
Yeah. So, my camera?
Yes.
Hit my.
Alright, so, just the story I had was during the Tusocha conference, there was, pretty sure they were Mohawk. And, there was a guy that was there who talked about the importance of language revitalization. And he talked about how we should view the language. You know, basically he said if you see your loved one there and that loved one is sick and ailing, and would you do something for them if you could? And that's how we should view the language. That if we can do something for them, we should. And like I said, it really does come down, you know, for better or worse, I want to say that, look back and say that we actually did something, that we were successful, that we really did something in 20 years from now, when we're all elders. But I'm just saying that we really do need to put everything aside and let's figure it out while we still have the fluent speakers, because in all honesty, we only have maybe 5 years with them, to be honest. And we've really got to figure out something to work with them, to work closely with them, to get that cultural knowledge and stuff. You know, that's something that is essential at this particular time. But it's something to think about, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. That really resonated with me, especially when you said if you had a relative that was in the hospital and they were dying, would you say no, or would you do everything you could to help them? And you know, that really, that was my takeaway from our meeting last time. So thank you for sharing that again. When do you want to have our next meeting?
Foster?
Preferably on a Friday.
Okay.
Sometimes we don't always have school on Fridays, so it'd be easier. It'd be nice if we can have all of our staff here.
The 10th? Does the 10th work for everybody?
EBT day, yes.
So the 27th? No, I think there's a special meeting on the 27th.
That was the Charlotte meeting, yeah.
Yeah, there is a.
No, there's not a travel meeting, there's a special meeting on the 31st, not on the 27th.
I knew that, so make sure you did.
Oh, it's on the 31st?
It's only on the 31st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why was I thinking of the 27th?
Because that text came in, it said the 27th through the 31st, but it's only the 31st.
Okay. I'll make sure they add it to the board. So do you guys want to meet next week? Because I'm on the 27th. Is that soon enough or?
Delmer said if you buy Pizza Hut, you'll be here.
Me.
And just something to think about. Like, you guys know me, but you know, I'm really passionate about like lands, this honorable lands. I feel like we spent a lot of energy talking about language and kind of the cultural aspect to it,
Yeah.
because all they are intertwined. How do we ensure, like, this might be a land committee question, but how do we ensure like our lands are safe and thriving for us to do cultural activities on? How do we teach those skills and knowledge of foraging and hunting and knowing how to survive in this zombie apocalypse? So just something to think about.
No, thank you for bringing that to light because we do get so engrossed in the language, and that's how I felt last time. So when we started talking about the societies, that was important, and even drafting specific policies that align with our 638 contracts. I know one thing that the tribe is doing right now is when they harvest feathers from the eagle, they're starting to draft, there's a directive from this council to draft policies to do that traditionally, and I think Russell was the one who said you can't just pluck them like a chicken, so you have to do it in a respectful way. So things like that need to be brought forth, so we're not living in this IRA government that this is conforming to our way of life, and we're finding a balance where it's the cultural match. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, cultural match, but it's one that's been used a lot by the Native Nations program, because they have this program that you can go for, and they have specific cohorts every year. And in there, they talk about, instead of us conforming to this specific government system, that was created to make it easier for the Washichu government to communicate with us. We need to find a cultural match. And I feel like this opens that door, and that's things that this committee will have the authority by law to create and bring to council, which is the only reason why I created a seat for a council person in here, is so that they can bring any potential legislation that this committee creates to the council floor.
Because not everyone learns through books. They learn language through food and plants, mostly. So that's, meeting the people where they're at and their passions through culture.
That the photo cat movement to this past week, they taught us language, but they also taught us radio and plants and stuff like that.
So just something to think about as we move on to next week.
Okay, so what time on the 27th? I know a lot of people have to leave to pick up their kids. Would you like to meet earlier at 1? Would you like to meet in the morning?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? Does 1 o'clock work for you?
Lately, 5:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you say? 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
Okay. And I'll have a new draft for you all. Unless you all have laptops that you want to bring, and I can just send it virtually. I really messed up all the printing. See that? All those blank sheets? I wonder if this will
Save some trees.
No, I printed it. Oh. 2007, I think was the last time I was a secretary.
Yeah, I could yeah.
Oh, no.
The 7th at 1.
Yep.
Right.
Sign on.
Yeah.
And so you're not the first one to get approved.
Let your crew know. If there's leftovers and stuff, you guys should take them.
All the meat and cheese straight.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. Please take them. Do you have to go after them?
Sometimes he'll hang out in the woods.
Yeah, I have to go. Hopefully it's just
Thanks for making space.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for saying that. I feel like everyone thinks I was doing
Everyone should be able to come next week.
That'll be good. I appreciate all the input. Thank you for coming.
I know Leland had a bunch of thoughts.
Good. I'm glad he's gonna come.
I'll let him know. He wanted to come today.
Yeah, I'm really trying to take my time with it. I don't want it to be
Collect information.
wrong. I got invited to go to Sweat and Pray about it last night, and I was like, can't, but
Suspicious activity.
I'll go when I can. I know. No, but the grant stuff, I didn't realize. So the A major is humongous.
That's the one, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I didn't want to take away from the individual programs. Thank you for being here. That's exactly, especially if you see it being here in New York, and they're making like 45 power, so when I think about the London portion, that's what I realize my friend, you're gonna apply, and I went to the program. I wasn't necessarily thinking about like,
Can you use a word?
Yeah, I don't know how you, because I agree with that word. You know, things that I think about. to even have, supposed to have. But I don't know if it's just, I remember when in school, I think around like that was where the computer was supposed to be.
Whatever is going to David here.
And then other ones are corporate one grant
Because we live, now we see you again.
live.
But what we're finding is that there's some.
Just talking all the ish.
I know. Before you can even start ours. Others are saying you can do yours, and at the end you have